Hello and welcome to the very first Jake and Xander only episode of To Boldly Watch. They told me that they're going to cut me out of the recording.
That's right, Xander.
wow.
It's good to see you.
Well, look at that. It's not as much work anymore. It already happened.
This comes... I'm sorry, Becca. She's back. This comes from the fact that when we...
Did you just block him? Oh, no. But the thing is, he's still recording on his end. Oh, this is going to be
what he does there. It doesn't
sinking
matter.
Nightmare.
My gosh.
This is so much work.
We have the only pink-haired broadcast we've been dreaming of.
Say it with us, Internet. Get Jake to get pink hair. Demand it.
We need a better hashtag.
Right. Pink hair.
Why are all these emails talking about pink hair? What did you do?
You're welcome.
And do it.
Becca, I think Xander's on a campaign of harassment against me.
You can't do that, Jake. Whoa. He's a commander. And you're just a Jake.
Oh no, I've broken protocol.
You can't break chain of command. It's very important, as we'll see one episode from now.
But also here with Crusher.
There you go. Yeah, hey, there it is. In
there
the teaser, she orders Worf to stop protecting her.
What is this episode?
I'll
tell you the star date.
Oh, yeah?
Okay.
43512.7.
0.7. So does that mean like June? The decimals are like months, right? But there's only 10 of them, so.
Well, yeah. I don't know.
Great.
Point. I don't even know.
Are you dividing the year right now by the high ground?
That's right, Anakin. I have it.
It's the high ground. It's the 12th episode of the third season, where the Enterprise is. Well, let's get a succinct explanation of this. Dr. Crusher is captured by terrorists who want to involve the Federation in their struggle for freedom.
And she's kind of into it.
No, it's just a regular case of Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah,
She's not on either side. She just wants everyone to be healthy and live forever, unless that's not a reasonable period of time to live.
But right off the bat, I have the note, Crusher is awesome. I'm so glad she's back. She's so cool, and I love her. I do love Pulaski, but Crusher's awesome.
Who? I've forgotten.
Oh, no.
Oh, slam.
She's got a million-yard stare. She cares. She's compassionate, but she's tough. She has a lot of love, but it's a lot of tough love. Unless it's for Wesley, in which case it's just regular love.
Yeah. Wesley can do no wrong.
Yeah. I love having a Crusher-centric episode. It's about time. She really just gets to save a life or two in every episode and doesn't get many lines or much love until today.
Yes.
We open with we're on what kind of mission are we on? We're like on a diplomatic mission. There's a
delivering medical supplies
to a planet called Rutia 4, I think. Rutia. And
I don't know.
Rutia.
But they have a nice little mall plaza where all of the Starfleet officers that are down on the away team have been ordered to carry weapons at all times because there's been a terrorist attack recently.
Now, was this a set that they built, or was this a shopping mall in the 90s that they just redecorated?
It looks like Spencer's gifts.
Yeah.
It looks like a set, I believe. It doesn't look like an actual established place. And when Data mentions that they need to leave, Worf and Crusher, who are having lunch in the Plaza Cafe,
like the mall food court.
The mall food court, right? They're having some Sbarro, and Crusher says, "Waiter," and a bomb explodes. That was such a weird transition. She's like, "Check, please."
Yeah.
And we didn't even get any tidbits of what Crusher and Worf were talking about over their cafe meal.
What was the gossip?
What the hot gossip? Was this their first lunch together? Did they have lunch together often?
I could see them being friends. I think they'd be fun friends.
Yeah, well, it was establishing that with the fact that they're out to eat. But we don't know anything about their relationship together except that they If you cross Crusher with chain of command, she will come for you, Worf.
Yep. She knows where she stands, and she's in command of this away mission, I guess.
Well, she is. She's chief medical officer,
Yep.
so
Top
and
of
it's
the
a
food
medical
chain.
mission. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Top of the Sbarro food chain. She gets her pizza first.
Well, what happens is there's an explosion and several people are injured, and she goes immediately to go help them. And Worf is immediately worried about her own safety and the safety of the away team, so he suggests that they leave, and she says, "No, in fact, you're going to go get medical supplies.
Yeah.
You're going to leave me right now." And he doesn't love that, but he has to obey orders and does. So he leaves her alone, and then a series of different men come into Crusher's life telling her she shouldn't stay there.
Yeah.
It felt very like, all right, we need to establish everybody in Crusher's life doesn't want her there right now.
The mansplaining is strong.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Boiled
but
down
you know
to
her response? It's excellent. Captain, I'm trying to put a life into a wounded body with sleight of hand, and I'm not going anywhere.
Yes.
Boom! That's right, Doctor. You're a magician. Because this is science magic that heals everyone in this day and age.
It's basically everyone saying, Crusher, no, and her going, Crusher, yes.
Crusher, yes.
Yep, and
Crusher, yes.
which of course leads to her being there in a situation where she actually can get kidnapped, unfortunately. So, like, not that anybody could anticipate this, though, because like she gets grabbed by a teleporting vagrant with a laser rifle.
Yeah, but they just saw it happen, so she shouldn't have said, Worf, come back. She should have said, Worf, watch my back.
Yeah, well, Worf was also there when it happened. So, like, him not being there wasn't really consequential.
Yeah.
Just Worf is not good at his job.
Yeah,
he's good at theoretical security. He's not good at practical security.
There it is.
He's good at coming up with suggestions they'll shoot down.
Right. It's a good point that you said teleported too and not beamed, because there is a difference and we can see it in the animation.
Yeah. Well, and what we find out later is they are dimension. Well, we find out really quickly they're dimension shifting, right?
Yeah.
So they're like
that sounds impossible. Dimension shifting. What are you talking about?
Your
with human body
do that?
Yeah,
it's going to be deadly.
But before we get there too, it's just a total mystery. And someone says something to Riker, and Riker's like, people don't just appear and disappear. And I was like, they literally do, Riker. Like, really every day.
No, here's the difference. They can't sense on any type of scanner when someone is about to dimensionally shift.
Right.
But is that saying that when someone starts to transport, before they've started transporting?
Yes. So with the sensor, if you had a sensor or a tricorder or something like that, essentially what's happening with the beam technology is you're being like deatomized and then reassembled somewhere else. So unperceptible to our senses, but to a sensor, you could have these atoms forming and predict when somebody would be beaming in, which is why we'd be able to...
But it's not like someone will be beaming here in 10 minutes. It's like, oh, the process has begun and we can sense it, because it just takes more time to transport, even if it's only a few seconds. So as technology increases, potentially a transporter could be instantaneous. It's just not yet.
Right. It's also that it is a beam, so the particles are like traveling, right?
Yeah. Whereas this, they talk specifically, because we're getting into sci-fi magic, but dimensionally shifting wouldn't have any of the residual effects or like tiny particles, because they're literally shifting dimensions, which
it's
can't
the
be
Rick
picked
and Morty
up.
time jump.
Yeah,
the portal time jump.
And they are totally messing time up, and this is not good. And
well, they pay the price for it, Xander. Let me tell you, because they have some serious tummy aches.
Yeah.
But it gives them much. The only cost is their lives. No, wait, I can do it better.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, but it's given their cause new life. The only cost is their life.
There were some good lines in this every once in a while.
Real good.
Well,
who's gonna talk?
So after Crusher is abducted. We aren't sure why. So there's a brief mystery, and we meet the head of security, Alexana Devos.
Hmm.
I didn't write
And-
it down.
Yeah. I
Well, you just
actually
remember her
wrote
shoulder pads.
her note as Lady Captain because
Yeah.
I put in Lady Captain is acting. And
Yeah.
she put in a lot. And it was
She
great.
had a lot to put in, right? She had to talk about the effects of terrorism and how it had like made her her society like live in fear for this whole time, and how passionate she was about stomping them. So like we're getting into pretty heavy themes like right off the bat of like not only is this a civil war, but it's one that's very personal for everyone involved.
Yeah. So the dynamics on this planet or this city, I guess, is that there have always been these terrorists. There's always been separatists, and a lot of the regular people support them with marches and regular stuff. But the terrorism is the problem. So normally they're not cracking down on regular people going to a march, but they are when, say, a school bus full of children is murdered, which is what really made her double down and go from a moderate to an extreme. They must be stopped. But the bigger question that they never address in this episode that I wish it had is, what is the government doing that is so atrocious? Because this is like chemical weapons warfare in basement laboratories level of terrorism for what? Why?
Yeah.
How will their new government be any better?
I think that's a great point. And one of the ways that I could kind of see they were coming at this is they didn't want us to sympathize too much with the people using the terrorist techniques. Because in a lot of Star Trek, especially if there's something like this where it's like a civil disobedience, you want both sides of the story. Well, of course, they're resorting to this because they're being treated in XYZ. But I think their focus here was like, these tactics are not okay, and no matter what. And so we don't really need to know the injustices if we're trying to focus on this for this story particularly.
Yeah, I feel like we would get caught up in the wrong details if we were worried too much about the political implications of it, so much as like the political implications of terrorism in general, and like what it means to like the difference between fighting for a cause with violence and fighting for a cause with terrorism, because there is a difference, though it's a blurry line, obviously.
Yeah, well, this felt very ground level as opposed to higher level politics. These are just the people that are dealing with their situations, and it's not a cause over anything else.
The tactics versus the philosophy a little bit.
Yeah.
Speaking of tactics, a little pivot, but when Alexana was told by Picard that Riker would be staying behind, were you at all worried and or impressed when Riker did not try and sleep with Alexa?
I think they probably did, just off camera.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's like separate.
We call it the Riker assumption. Is that what it is?
The Riker assumption, the Riker theorem.
They've slept with already just to get the tension out. That's the icebreaker, and so then they could have the conversations. But it's all consensual and cool.
Cool. And just like this episode, we never need to talk about it again. It just happened.
Yeah.
Great.
I think it was also in this that she starts listing a bunch of things that happened in human history or something along those lines, because I wrote down, oh shit, we've got the Irish unification coming up in 2024.
So that's an interesting thing that is a little behind the scenes there. That was a big deal in how this got aired in the UK. It didn't air in the UK for that reason, because
the whole episode?
For a time it didn't. They now, I think, edited versions of it get released.
Whoa!
Because this was still an issue in Ireland at this time, and that's actually what this is an analogy for. Apparently, Melinda Snodgrass. Let me find the notes for it.
Yay!
Yeah, Melinda Snodgrass. Her idea got changed, unfortunately. Originally, the plot was intended to have parallels to the American Revolution, but writer Melinda Snodgrass was told to change the analogy to Northern Ireland, a change she was very unhappy about. Quote,
Does all her stuff just get changed to Ireland?
Well, this is the second one, right? Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I don't know where this is coming from, but probably the reason she eventually left. I wanted it with Picard as Cornwallis, and the Romulans would have been the French, who were in our revolution trying to break this planet away. Suddenly, Picard realized he's one of the oppressors. Instead, we do Breakfast in Belfast, where our people decide they're going to go off to Northern Ireland. Huh. So yeah, that's like, it changed the analogy for her, so like it became actually a hot button issue a little bit. I don't think it was like they were boycotted or anything like that. But in the UK, the first run transmission was cut due to references to the reunification of Ireland being achieved through terrorism. And I think that's really what it was.
I never put that together.
Because Data we're kind of jumping ahead, but I think it's worth it to while we're in this conversation. It's like Data kind of makes mention of like, well, terrorism, quote unquote. He didn't say quote unquote. He says terrorism worked in these situations, right? And that is not a thing that is true necessarily, so much as terrorism occurred, but then maybe reunification happened afterwards.
Right.
Well, we haven't even talked about meeting this guy yet, but he has a really great line about what makes someone a terrorist and what makes someone a war hero.
Well, let's get there because I think that's a worthwhile thing to bring up. Okay, so we meet the leader of
Kyril Finn.
Mm-hmm.
Kyril, we immediately think, okay, we're supposed to sympathize with this guy because when we meet him, he's offering Crusher food. She is obviously well trained and sticking to it. She goes on a hunger strike. She wants on her name.
Yes.
Great tactics. Wow.
I read that too.
Impressed. Yeah.
Very good, like officer prisoner tactics of,
Pulaski would have shared her name and eaten everything.
And then gotten out of there and cured everything. So shut up, Jake.
That's true. She would have written a book on how you could actually do dimensional sharing, no problem.
Here's how to fix it. Not that I will ever transport.
That's true. She would have fixed it.
You know what? Sometimes people don't really want their problems fixed. They just want to think about them. Pulaski really ruins that for people.
Anyway, Crusher's awesome. But this guy is not. What I found interesting is we have the same sort of roguish, not general because he's a terrorist, but this is supposed to be sort of the interest for Crusher as opposed to the roguish interest that we've seen for Troy. And I think that there's a different way that they're presenting themselves. This seems more like a mature guy who's like seen some shit, like he's gone through trauma, and that's supposed to be attractive to her. Maybe.
Xander, are you suggesting that maybe to discuss it they should don some sparkly unitards and stretch it out?
Absolutely. Please. It was missing.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, he's a little deceptive at first, and like he doesn't tell her who he is immediately. He just asks her questions, and then when she mentions the violence and he says, I was the one who hurt those people, then it dawns on her that he's a leader, right? And so he goes back and forth pretty quickly from being like sympathetic to a jerk. They've written him in an interesting way of like how
sociopath or not,
right? Yeah,
you're on the other side of history. Is he?
It's a tough thing to tackle, right? Is like trying to make a terrorist, because that is what he is, a sympathetic character, because they still have a cause that they believe is right, and the best villains do believe they are doing the right thing. So we definitely want to try and write someone that way.
Yeah, I had this moment of, wow, this show is way more complex than it means to be or is interpreted as a lot of the time. I mean, especially early, we're still early on, and it's like, gosh, this is really complex.
Yeah.
We definitely see what's going on with both sides.
I found it a little circular at points, though, of just like keep reiterating that, you need to fight for what's right no matter the cost. And then just people just saying, well, the cost can be too high. And then that argument kind of being regurgitated in different ways.
In different episodes or within this episode?
Within this episode. Like I didn't see the debate going on. Like it was just, we got a lot of different analogies, right? Like even with Riker and the security Loxana, right? You hate them as much as they hate you. We just keep talking about the vitriol justifying the violence, justifying the response, and the circle of that.
Well, what's
we don't really break
it
down.
Yeah, they never let Finn have a change of heart or change his mind because they decided we have used the word terrorist. We need to keep the resolution needs to involve him being evil. So we can't let him have this growth and this change of heart. And if you're not convincing anyone of anything, then you are making the same argument on deaf ears. So that's probably where the cyclical feeling comes from.
Yeah, they mentioned the same thing of like, we're just not being heard. We're shouting as loud as we can, but nobody's listening. And so that might have something to do with it. Also, they're messing with the format a little bit in the A plot, B plot, in that it's all involved in the same story. It's just different angles. So we're hearing the same things over and over again.
So much talking about like what's happening too, about the people who aren't there, as opposed to the things kind of happening. Like every scene is like, all right, let's talk more about this plot.
Right.
Also, that teaser had the longest Picard update I had ever heard. Did you guys hear the captain's log?
It
was
would.
like
It gave a lot of information.
It
Shortly
gave-
prohibited. Beam down armed. I don't. You think it was long?
Yeah, but I mean, longer than normal. But
I don't know.
he's always that always is an exposition dump. That's the purpose of it. I just
Yeah.
noticed it felt a little rambly.
Exposition-y for the exposition dump.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Hey, now we see sick people though, and that's Crusher's only weakness.
Yes, that's true.
People laying on cots, moaning and groaning, and saying, my dimensional being is hurting.
DNA. Yeah.
Yeah, my DNA is hurting. No. And she says, there is no reversal that I see. They are dying because you made them all use this stupid thing when you knew what they didn't talk about. An interesting plot point is like, did you tell all these people when you gave them this tool and said, use our little inverter here and go do terrorist acts? Did he mention to his followers that you will die, your DNA will be ripped apart when you do this time jumping?
I bet it was like a sacrifice for the cause part of signing
for
up.
him for sure.
Right,
I don't think he told everybody.
That's true.
He
There are
didn't
probably
get Crusher's
various
consent.
tactics. Yeah. That's one of the things that I wrote. Like Crusher and Picard both get like dimension doored without their consent, and it ultimately is gonna mess up their DNA.
Right. Now, Dimension Doored?
Yeah. It's a level 4
D&D
wizard
spell.
That's great.
I play too much
I'm only
D&D.
level 1, so
You'll get there.
Yeah. Oh, and then that's where we get another really great line. This episode has a bunch of them where, I know what I was going to say, is that one dimension hop, you're probably fine because Finn has done it several times and he's still up and walking around.
Yeah.
So we don't know if either the people moaning and groaning on the cots have done it a long time ago and it sunk in which case, wow, we're going to lose our... That can't be it. Or they have done it like hundreds of times.
Or they're just being little babies and they can't take
little
it.
Babies. Yeah, Crusher can take it. She doesn't even talk about her pain, but it's immense.
I would love for her to go back to the leader and be like, you know what? They should just a bunch of whiners.
Send it back out
I
there.
gave them aspirin and they're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the line. He says, you know you're going to die. Like, what are you doing? How are you going to lead this movement? And he says, a dead martyr is worth 10 posturing leaders.
That's a good line.
Redundant, because of course a martyr's dead.
Right.
Yeah. But good line.
A martyr is worth 10 posturing.
And he calls himself a posturing leader. He's very aware of what he is. And will he be a good leader if he reaches his goals? Probably not. As Beverly Crusher later in the episode says, she's terrified to see.
Yeah. Well, and we come at it from the perspective of the Enterprise is infallible and the crew of the Enterprise can do no wrong, because we're like, oh yeah, she's in danger for now, but we'll get there eventually. And what are they going to do? They're just some puny like civilization. But we find that this dimension door weapon is actually formidable against the Enterprise, and they use tactics to be able to take it down, which was like unthinkable.
Yeah, that was a little, almost a rule breaker in some way of what Roddenberry set out early on of like, you know, the crew of the Enterprise generally can handle anybody below them at a technology level. And so don't let that happen. But we have this a little bit of escape hatch / dimension door, I guess.
Yeah.
But it was played pretty well. They just teleported all over the ship. They night crawlered all over the ship.
They did, yeah.
Should we talk about the attack?
Yeah.
Yeah. So things escalate to a point where they not only can't find these people underground, but Crusher's not being returned. And
wait, hold on. Actually, there's a lot that happens in between.
Yeah.
It's a big jump. So the technology that we're talking about, wait, what's the rule that we're breaking? Because I don't understand. How are we rule breaking here with the new tech? Because Wesley, he wants to go down and help negotiate for his mother. And Picard's like, I have something more important for you to do, Wesley.
It's not like a technology rule. I'm just saying when we talked about, I think it was the Story Bible episode, which was just like Gene Roddenberry didn't want to let civilizations of lesser technology levels take over the Enterprise. Mostly, they had to be like a reason, and that reason in this case is their superior one-time technology of just hopping around places.
Right.
Peekaboo.
Peekaboo.
But it's also unsustainable technology.
Right. So it's not like they could do it all the time. They're paying a price for it a little bit.
I see. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Q as an adversary could do whatever he wants, right? You know, he's not the same. He's not under the same rules.
Yeah.
Or any rules.
A whole other echelon. Okay. So we start to figure out how they're doing this thing simultaneously to us learning about it through Beverly Crusher. We see that this piece of equipment that the regular government on the planet couldn't figure out, but they got off some dead terrorists. They give it to the Enterprise. And of course, Geordi, Data, Wesley figure it out. Put three great brains, 2 human, 1 android together, and you're going to figure out any technology. So Wesley calls it out first with something that he learned in his test for the Federation Academy. Yeah, that is. Wait, what about the thing? The thing. And Jordy's like,
I love
that theorem.
Yeah, that he forgot the name. That was a cute little like character moment.
Yeah, it's showing that he has such capacity, and yet he doesn't have the experience as these other people do. Even someone who's virtually a computer.
Right.
And so they're figuring out simultaneously. So that's how they figure out, okay, well, we can trace the call now.
The call's coming from inside the planet.
And then Picard walks in. He's like, this deadly thing they're doing. Do they require a doctor?
Yeah, he just kind of shows up from the background, like fully informed of what they just figured out. It's like,
Dixon killed this scene.
Yeah.
He's everywhere. He's always listening. Comms are always on, and Picard is always eavesdropping, is what we learned in that moment. And then the very cute waiter that we met in the first scene, he was involved. He gets arrested.
He always is.
Yeah, Riker has to oversee some intense interrogations where Alexana's always like, so I can interrogate them harder. He's like,
Can I shoot them? Can I shoot this one?
Can I shoot them? All right, we're done with these easy questions. Get out of here.
Yeah.
We learned that her predecessors were all murdered, and she had stopped the practice of terrorist sympathizers getting disappeared.
Right.
The other dimension door.
She's like the sheriff who just can't keep the town under control, right? It's barely the outlaws are everywhere kind of situation.
She just wants to go home.
Tough gig.
Go home and
she looks great in that outfit, though.
She really
does. The shoulder
does.
pads are imposing, and I believe her, and I trust her.
But yeah, I like Riker's technique in this too, of like, she's like, oh, I'm gonna go harder and be a fierce interrogator, and he's just like, nah, I know you're part of the group. Just go ahead and tell them that we want our doctor back, and then we're cool. And she's like, oh yeah. Like
he really undercuts her authority, and she's pissed about it at first, but really, what can she do?
Yeah.
He really just shuts her down and is like, nope, we're done with him. Give us our doctor.
Well, to be fair, nothing she was doing had been working, and so I guess I like the attitude of him just being like above the fray. He's like, look, I know you're having issues. I want my doctor back.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. It's like, Prime Directive has already been seriously fucked up, even though we were just trying to deliver medical supplies, but now it's very clear we were interfering. And you know what? Let me just pluck my doctor and go. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then we see the killer is an artist.
Well, it seems like the killer is an artist on the Game Boy and prints them out on the Game Boy printer.
That was pretty. It's hard to draw hands, and he was drawing hands in that first sketch. So
yeah, the fingernails, they're always toughest. Dirt, no dirt. I don't know.
I mean, Xander, if you want to sketch Beverly right now, I'd love to see you do better.
Yeah.
Wait, I need my Game Boy.
I can do it on Etch-a-Sketch.
What did the Story Bible say? Like a doctor with the body of a stripper or something like that. It's Dr. Crusher.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
Nailed it.
Body of a stripper.
That's what it said
for every character. Male and female. I put it in the male ones in my mind.
Yeah.
a captain, bald, with the body of a stripper. This is the scene when we find out he can draw, and Crusher's like, do that. Do anything but all this killing.
Yeah,
Why
man.
are you murdering so much? And he's
Start
like,
a band.
hey, guess what? I have studied your planet's history, and you come from this place that was America. And she corrects for North America, which is interesting. We can talk about like what that means about where geography went, and borders and such, or the continent of America. But he says this line about how I've studied your General Washington, and he's called this war hero, this soldier, this general, and I'm a terrorist only because it's determined. These terms are determined by the winners or the losers.
Yeah.
The winners or the losers?
A concept that we've heard a few times, but not from this perspective, I think.
Well, we're hearing this perspective in the conversation about American textbooks right now, and how they frame, racial struggles in America, and the framing of slavery is like, it's done. It was over states' rights, and now everybody's happy. No, fuck you. It's still inherent in everything that happens in this country, so that kind of thing.
It's also like this episode's kind of drawing a line between like war and terrorism, right? Because he's right in that like the winners do declare, how they won. That's how history is written, right? But like even when we're talking about our adversaries in certain wars, we don't refer to them all as terrorists because they fought under, I guess, the agreement of war. But I mean, violence. If you've got rules to violence, it's still violence. Like it's still awful. But whereas terrorism is generally like hurting innocent people and the populace and not fighting other combatants, right? So it is a different level of I don't know what is it? Is it like additionally more immoral? Crimes. Yeah, war crime. Well, that's what I'm saying. Is like
agreed upon Geneva Convention.
Right, but to me, like, still, war is a crime, right? So, like, there's just a war there's a crime beyond these crimes, and so I think that's what they're trying to differentiate here.
Right, well, but anything is motivated if your son died.
Right.
So
it does get mentioned quite a bit.
We get a little backstory there. So now we learn that, kind of to your point of like erasure of these blips in history, his real goal. One of them, I mean, he wanted a doctor, but he also wants to keep her in order to have a bargaining, leveraging chip to just say, we need to be noticed on the galactic stage.
Yeah. And get the Federation involved.
Talk of sanctions. Again, not light stuff.
No.
But he decides that shooting everybody or blowing up the Enterprise is probably the best way to move forward. Beverly learns of this because he apologizes for maybe needing to kill her son.
Do you think that she was experiencing Stockholm Syndrome? Is that what you guys would describe it as?
Picard called her out.
Yeah, and I think that she was aware of it, so it's a weird place to be in. She's like, I know what's happening, but there is legitimacy to some of these feelings, so let's explore what that means.
Right. That's the thing. Is like I feel like she's just trying to explore the nuance of these people's causes, and like, is that Stockholm Syndrome? Because I feel like Stockholm Syndrome, I don't know the exact definition of it, but it is definitely like identifying with your captors or abusers, right, in some way, because it's not just related to hostage situations. Right. But if like, she has an abuse committed against her because she's being held against her will, so you shouldn't really identify with that action. But if you're trying to identify with their cause, is there a difference? I don't know. That's just an interesting thing of like, I don't know if it's fair to say that she was under their spell in any way, so much as really trying to understand what was happening.
Like lucidly, I would say. You know what I mean? Like there's a difference between being totally swept away by it and being like, oh, I know what this feeling is, or the beginnings of Stockholm Syndrome.
Well, she also never endorsed what they were doing. She's just trying to understand what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. Which is uniquely Crusher.
It wasn't what I would consider Stockholm Syndrome, because she had put a face now to this other side, which even if she wasn't captive, she probably from the ship would have been like, oh, well, we should hear them out too.
Right.
And I'm sure there is some legitimacy. And should be negotiations.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Stockholm Syndrome itself as a concept kind of boggles my mind a little bit. Do you guys know where it originally had come from?
No, not
Stockholm, obviously. I looked it up. While I was watching this episode, and I'm going to give you a very brief synopsis of it now. But it was during a bank robbery in 1973, where a convict took 4 employees of a bank held hostage when the bank robbery didn't go down correctly. And he held them in a vault for 6 days. And when they were released, none of them would testify against him in court. And they actually began raising money for his defense.
Wow, because they were sympathetic.
Well, there's a bunch of theories about why they did it. So much as like, yes, they were sympathetic to him too, but also they felt mistreated by the police that were handling the situation. They thought they treated him overly aggressively, and they pointed guns in their direction during a lot of the standoff and stuff like that, and they were upset about that. So there's a lot of different sides to what happened there, but that's just like an interesting. Oh, these people walked away from being held hostage for 6 days and were trying to help their captor. And after it too, bananas. Yeah.
Well, you know what? Maybe he was just a nice guy.
Well, we find out that he's a complex one and an artist, right? So then we find out with this bargaining chip, he wants to really send a message to the galactic world, or the galaxy, that
community,
the galactic stage, the galactic community. There it is. That's the word. By taking out the Federation's flagship. So he has a plan to go up there and blow it up. And they start to. So these insurgents start appearing all over the ship, attacking members of the crew. We start with 2 extras.
Geordi thinks fast and leaps heroically flat into a push-up position. Beautifully done. Too bad this intruder didn't notice how hugely his shot whiffed.
Right.
Clearly missed this man completely. But for that reason, Geordi could sneak up after they beamed off the engineering department again and remove the bomb.
And use his communicator to transport it away.
Yes.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because they couldn't get a lock on it. The sensors are being scrambled, right? And so
he had the communicator to pinpoint. This was also a great example of using your move action and calling for help at the same time.
Oh, yeah. And do you think that Geordi would get like penalized for needing a replacement comm?
Oh, you could replicate those things.
For saving the ship, he should appeal that penalty.
Well, rules are rules. So
he did blow it up.
Yeah, I'd say they'd dock it from his wages, but no one has wages.
No one has wages.
We're in a
dock it from his holodeck time.
Oh.
Ooh.
Both of you know that's a huge penalty.
Oh my God,
especially for Geordi.
He needs that beach and that ukulele time. Get this man a Mai Tai after what he's done.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And not only that, but up on the bridge, these insurgents appear. Take out Worf. Take out the helm.
As we've stated, Worf is pretty easy to take out. He is never the best fighter in any situation.
You know who is, though? Doesn't Picard get a good old hit?
Oh, he punches the leader, Chiron, right?
Yeah.
Chiron,
he gets a mean right hook.
And then he gets a tackle.
Yeah.
And the tackle is where Finn just sucks him up. They go together. We don't see where they land, but Picard is then taken hostage as well.
Right.
And Data is just like, he can't move because they have to shoot the thing where this very slow graphic process where you have to like, don't move as the person gets up out of the scene. But Data just has this look of like stunned and doesn't move. That's very funny for a very long time.
Like totally whiffs, like reaching out for them like seconds after they're gone.
Even though we've seen what a fast fighter he can be.
Yeah.
Jumping out of the way of a laser 10 times in a second.
Right.
Hey, we're putting chips back in that
effects. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there. So then Picard, I guess, like, what does he even accomplish down there so much as like understanding, getting Beverly's perspective of what's going on?
He thoroughly chastises her. Like, calm down, Picard. Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah. Right.
Well, it is a little I told you so. He told her 5 different times, as did everyone else who mansplained to her, get back on the ship, and then she got kidnapped. So he probably felt very justified in that. This is a rare occasion where Picard doesn't outsmart the opponent. And I think it has something to do with what I mentioned earlier about this is not an opponent that will bend or learn.
Yeah.
Which is kind of one-dimensional, but
That's
he can draw.
true. Well, considering they're using that tool, you're limited to one.
Well, he's an ideologue too. Like, I don't know if he has the capacity for that kind of growth. I don't think anybody, like, this is a lifelong mission of his. This is his cause, and he's died for it, and he's put other people, or he's going to die for it. And like, a lot of his colleagues are dying for it. Like, they know that's part of their life. So like, I don't think there is swaying this person, but maybe connecting with him in some way, or at least getting him to do a different action and some minor step before he dies is the best we can do.
It seems like they're starting to make this progress because he has drawn many drawings of Beverly, which are lovely, so photorealistic. And then he has a one-on-one with Bev where he says, "So sorry, I could see you're excited to see your captain. You really like him. I might have to kill him." And she has some very powerful dialogue about the scariest thing, as I mentioned before, is that you could actually win, and you are terrifying. Why do you want to rule with fear?
Yeah. Yeah, Gates McFadden just kills it. She's so good. And it's hard to do a lot of these like partner-only scenes when you're in this ensemble show, but she is incredible.
You just don't want to disappoint her, which he is doing, ruling with fear. And he says, "I don't want you to fear me."
Well, then stop being a terrorist.
Right.
Okay, maybe
in the name.
about it. At the same time, the Federation has locked onto their not transportation, but teleportation.
Right.
They're coming into the base, which only exists 40 meters underground, 30 meters underground. There's no way in or out. Like, good on them, but what if you ever decided, like, okay, maybe we don't want to die anymore, but we're stuck in this underground cave, so we have to transport, whatever, one more time?
That's that devotion. Yeah, they're desperate.
Part of the
You
cause.
could have had one escape route, just saying.
But it's how they remain undetected, too, and how they've always survived. I don't know. I felt like this episode still, like, didn't... They kind of were they weren't defending terrorism. They were like justifying it in some way. And I didn't love it. I don't know. I didn't see this guy's point. I saw that he was abused by the system for sure. But I don't think it justified killing innocent people and causing fear. I don't think anything.
So you agree with the BBC censoring this episode?
No, I think that's the point, is that they didn't make him sympathetic because they didn't want that.
But they tried to show he's not a human, but he's got sorry, Xander, go ahead.
No, and I like to think too that the time of this airing in the real world too is before 9/11, so we're all old enough to remember the time before that where terrorism was
I don't know
something,
what you're talking about.
right. Terrorism was something that was talked about, but there wasn't this huge glaring example of it like we have now of like, these are the things that are happening and there's this huge parallel. So you can see them trying to, like, we need to bring attention to this, and it was still something that was touchy and not necessarily in the larger public scope like it is now.
Yeah. And then Alexana comes on down, they raid the base, and our dude Finn gets shot, and she has a very interesting explanation that, he's a martyr, but otherwise, if we just imprison him, there'd be a big rally to unimprison him, even more attacks in that time. And maybe it'll be worse, but I think in the short term, it'll be better. And I'm trying to prevent deaths here. One or many.
And it makes sense in this context.
Yeah.
Also, I had down poor Troy. She was just walking along and stuff keeps happening to her. People keep teleporting her around her. And I was like, aw.
My week off. She didn't really have lines.
She's just reacting.
Yeah, he popped up in front of her and was like, "Tell everybody this, sanctions or else." Bye.
Yeah.
And she didn't get to do anything.
No. And I was like stressed about it. I was like, hold on, let me write this down or something. What do you need?
And her aerobics partner is gone. So we can relax.
So hard. But she was looking lovely in turquoise the whole time.
I love that outfit. It's so
great
good.
outfit. Yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, an okay episode. Actually, I should say, the producers did not like it. What was said about this? Many of the writers of the show were extremely unhappy. Ronald Moore described it as an abomination. It's our one terrorist show. We didn't have anything interesting to say about terrorism except that it's bad and Beverly gets kidnapped. They take her down to the caves. We have big, nice, preachy speeches about terrorism and freedom, fighting and security forces versus society. It's a very unsatisfying episode, and the staff wasn't really happy with it.
I don't think it's that bad. I think that it did need to have a larger discussion of like, what are they even fighting for?
Yeah, like I feel like because they stayed out of the context, it maybe lacked our drive. But then I guess that's a catch-22 because, as I said earlier, if we gave too much context, then it wouldn't be about the terrorism as much. It'd become about the issue and our feelings on that. So I think it's also a tough thing to tackle.
I think we've run into this in segments before, but this is very much after school special Trek. Like we've had it with the drugs discussion with Wesley early on. Like every once in a while, they'll just get on the soapbox and like, here's the message. Eat it.
It does feel like after school special. I very much agree with that.
I don't. I liked it. I thought it was really complex. And I think that most things are gray areas and they highlighted a good amount of them. And the characters we met were interesting and had justified backstories. So I think the writers are wrong and can go to hell.
Whoa. No, I didn't dislike it.
I don't think I think what I meant by after school special of it is it really took it at a topic and really hammered it home in terms of exploring its philosophy a lot, right? And after school special sounds derogatory, but like, and it kind of is, I guess. But like, it's also like that was a style of thing that happened a lot in the 90s, and I feel like whether it was the drug episode is a really good example, Xander, or like whether it would have been a thing about STDs or anything like that, which you have seen.
I'm pro.
You're pro STD. Okay. Well,
no. Anyway, I gotta go. What's next?
Wait. Well, before we do, we should talk about next week's episode. It's all about STDs. No, I'm just kidding. It's Deja Q. Ooh. Because when the Enterprise is helping a planet that is threatened by their moon falling out of orbit, they are interrupted by the appearance of Q, who's been stripped, literally, of his clothes. And literally of his powers.
Oh, snap.
It's Majora's Mask.
Do the people on the planet have butt mouths?
They do!
Can't wait to see it. See you there.
Engage. Can't wait to see it.